It's 2023 and the 60th anniversary of Doctor Who, a year that should be bringing fans together in celebration following several unpopular and incredibly divisive years under the guidance of a certain Mr. Chibnall. But can you tell it's such a landmark year? And more importantly, do you actually care? In what is proving to be a complete damp squid, returning showrunner, and by God I hate that word, RTD, doesn't seem to be bothered in celebrating this legendary telly show with his fellow fans, and instead seems intent to be on laughing at them from afar and even contributing to continuing the destruction of our favourite telly show. Yes, of course, I'm talking about his latest casting disaster, that of a drag queen. And not only that, but a drag queen that only a minority of label-loving tick-boxing juveniles with purple hair have ever heard of. And it's all thanks to the awful and tacky American show produced by an old crone that has contributed in misleading and brainwashing hundreds of young people around the world. Of course, this is part of an ongoing narrative that started in 2017, and it's one that Mr. RTD, or as I call him, Russell the Righteous, is determined to enforce, or at least it seems that way. And in this case, this is bringing the whole TQI agenda that he is so passionate about into our beloved show. It must be absolutely awful for RTD and his fellow cult members to realise that the majority of the UK, and indeed the world, will not comply with their beliefs and dictates, and that many are now beginning to question what is being shoehorned in to our daily lives and entertainment. This is blatantly RTD challenging those that dare to question drag queen story time. God forbid that parents especially would dare to question what their very own children are exposed to. The word is entertainment. RTD seems to have forgotten that Doctor Who should be accessible to all, no matter what political or personal outlooks they may have. Doctor Who should be a show suitable for all ages. Indeed, in the UK, it's now firmly established as a family show. It's a show that you can leave your kids in front of unsupervised, as you don't need to worry about swear words or radical points of view. Or at least you didn't. It's obvious following his 2 rants of 2022 that he is a very angry man. His agenda is crystal clear. And as he shoehorns certain beliefs into the show, this latest one is a drag queen. Now, let's be clear here. I've worked with some of the best drag queen in cabaret through my life, and I'm talking legends, absolute consummate professionals that understood their art and understood how to entertain. Huge talents. But now it seems to have changed. Drag is not a gender. As anyone with rational belief knows, there are only 2 genders. It's not something that needs protected. It is, in fact, a job. Drag is a bloke in a frock with makeup telling lewd and, hopefully, un-PC jokes to an adult audience. RTD seems to think this all has a place in Doctor Who. How he's come to that conclusion, I cannot say. All he seems to be doing is sticking 2 fingers up to the fans and, indeed, the viewing public. How they must laugh in Bad Wolf and BBC Studios offices as they know that these decisions that he and they make will upset even the most liberal of consumer. Consumer being a very important word. Personally, I think he's getting very confused with his previous works, that of It's a Sin and Queer as Folk, both series of which were for totally different demographics. Maybe he should actually think about moving on from Doctor Who already. If he wants to write about trans issues and drag queens, maybe he should head back to his friends over at Red Productions and write a 9 p.m. script for Channel 4. That's where he seems to be more appropriate. Is this the end for Doctor Who? Absolutely. It's time for the Who-tastic panel. Delighted to be joined here by Time Muddler Brendan and MJ as well. Hi guys, thank you very much for joining me.
Evening
Brendan,
all.
drag in Doctor Who. Am I completely insane?
Well, I'm trying to be inquisitive. I'm trying to be objective. I'm trying to look at what what is RTD and the production office really up to? So I'm trying to go at it without trying to yet blur all the lines with all the politics, the diversity inclusion policy of the BBC. I'm trying to just say, right, it's the inclusion of a drag actor, somebody I've never heard of before. Don't watch RuPaul, so I'm out of that straight away. So I'm intrigued. So then I think, right, have you picked this actor because you are going to be political? You're going to go down a gender fluid road where basically, if it was, say, the Rani, we're all guessing who this character may be since it's the most powerful enemy
not
ever.
all of us, Time Muddler, not all of us, some.
Yeah. So you're thinking, right, okay, are we extending what's been going on the last few years in the series, where instead of having a time lady and a time lord, we are now doing a more gender fluid thing. Therefore, a drag actor who can apparently play both personas maybe more easily, would be the argument, I'm guessing, is picked. I'm trying to think, are we going back to the late 1980s version of Doctor Who when we had a bit of high camp, heightened reality, Bertie Bassett blooming monster? Or is it Horns of Nymon, high collars jazz and melodrama? Are we doing the kind of camp kind of Doctor Who where it was like City of Death, cliffhangers, where it was all very dramatic when, you had the Count meeting Doctor Who in Renaissance Italy, and it was all very camp dialogue? Is it Lady Adrasta style OTT acting? Is this what we're after? Is it an Eric Roberts style master? I always dress for the occasion. That kind of camp dialogue. Why are we recruiting this type of persona? Because drag is a persona. Are we hiring the male actor because actually on Broadway he's a good actor? Apparently, I do not know. Or are we hiring him because of his drag persona? I mean, the one video clip that came out from the BBC team a couple of nights ago, when he turns around and says, I am Jinx Monsoon, and this is my costume for Doctor Who. Now, I've never seen PR like that before. Normally they say, it's in the press and it'll say, basically, we've got this actor. This actor's in the next series of Doctor Who. They don't obviously tell us about their sexual background, or they don't tell us what they do in their private life. They just tell us we've got this actor. And you as a fan go, oh, right, that's interesting. But obviously, I think where we come into this debate is, why do we get told? I mean, why don't we just know that it's Jinx Monsoon and we'll all go, well, I've never heard of that person, I'll Google it. Bit like I honestly hadn't heard of Shruti Gatwa, so I looked it up, watched Sex Education, and, knew more about that one. So I'm trying to work out why we have, auditioned and selected this person. What is it to bring to the program?
MJ, you're coming across from this. I mean, obviously, I'm quite involved with the political side of all this, as heightened at the beginning of the job. I sort of know where, or I assume I know where Russell's coming from. You're coming at this from a completely. You're just coming this as a fan of Doctor Who and of science fiction. What's your take on this?
Well, I mean, as you say, I can't really speak to the political issues. I don't feel, because I'm a full disclosure, straight white male, so I'm down the bottom of the list of
you are an endangered species now. Yeah.
So that's right. My opinion counts for naught. And look, to be honest, I don't really have a perspective on that, because I don't have that. I haven't lived that experience. I will say I have also worked with drag queens in my work in cabaret and entertainment, and I've found them all to be fantastic, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And I had a ball. I love a bit of bawdy humor, I must admit. If I, as a straight male, made the same jokes, I'd be frowned at, I must admit. It's interesting that's the dynamic. But look, I mean, in terms of as a viewer, in theory, I have no problem with a drag queen in Doctor Who if the story serves it. There's an argument to be had that high camp works very well in science fiction and fantasy amongst storylines that have a lot of verisimilitude. What leaps to mind is, I don't know whether you're familiar with the series Angel, the spin-off of Buffy, the Vampire Slayer.
Yeah.
The character of Lorne, the demon in LeMay, and he has someone says, oh, I never thought he'd be a demon wearing LeMay. He says, oh, the evil ones can't carry it off. It comes off too camp. Hilarious line. And it works really well, because what's around him a real stakes and narrative verisimilitude. So I think if the story is structurally sound and there is verisimilitude, there are high stakes, then a high camp character like that could work. Absolutely. So, but I think what is a more interesting question to me personally, rather than, I mean, I will say I haven't watched the show for many years. I've kind of lost interest in it. Not for any political reason. It just doesn't interest me anymore.
Is that because it's lost a science fiction edge for you, or why was that?
Yeah, I think it's lost. It's no longer the show that I was watching since the early '80s. Really,
it's just, well, that's definitely
narrative style. It's being made for a different audience, and okay, c'est la vie. So I mean,
it's good that you say it's being made for a different audience, because obviously the proof is the audience just is not there. It's a fictional audience they seem to be aiming it at.
Yeah, look, I don't know. I mean, it's. I mean, I'm in Australia, so I don't know what's happening on the ground in the UK so much. But it's not made for me, clearly, and that's fine. C'est la vie. But what I was going to say is the question I find more interesting than do we want a drag queen in Doctor Who? What I find more interesting is why do they want a drag queen in Doctor Who at this particular point in time?
Good point.
And I think that's more of an interesting question. I'm fascinated. I think it speaks to this current zeitgeist trend in the media world amongst creators, this adversarial relationship that seems to have developed with audiences. I find it, and I'm just purely from a fascination perspective, I find it fascinating that this is the culture we're in. This whole notion of toxic fandom. I mean, fandom's been debating and bitching and whining and complaining since I can remember. Yeah. So, you know, having an opinion on something doesn't make a fan toxic per se.
Absolutely.
I think. But I find this adversarial relation, and it's not just Doctor Who, it seems to be every science fiction franchise at the moment. There seems to be this adversarial, to use the modern parlance, trolling kind of behavior going on between from producers and so on, and I've got to ask, why is that? Why? It's tantamount to me opening a fish and chip shop down the road and calling all my customers idiots.
Yeah, well, I totally agree with that.
Why would I do that?
Yeah, well, exactly, and I get what you're saying with there. I don't know if either of you've seen this, but when it was first announced that this character, and it is a character, Jinx Monsoon is a character by a bloke who dresses up in that. Not there's nothing wrong with that, but he's a drag queen, and Jinx Monsoon is a character. But when it was first announced that,
and probably extremely talented. I mean, I don't know.
Well, we don't, because we don't know it. But this came up on Instagram. It's good here. We've got this person here said the right, and it's always about the right, isn't it? It's always about the right wing of politics. The right said, we don't want drag queens around our children. The King, Russell Davis 63, said, hold my beer, let's go. To which then Russell the Righteous, as I call him, replied, it's not too bad at the moment, but the fight goes on. I want to know exactly what fight is he talking about. As I said, drag is not endangered species. It is not another gender. There are no drag rights matter or whatever it's called. What's he talking about? Why is he looking at?
Now, you see, in the Radio Times, there was a slightly longer interview, wasn't there? And some of the story about this selection of this drag artist was that RTD obviously knows his partner. And when he was in Manchester, he saw some shows. And the story seems to go that when he saw him do a particular type of act, which my understanding was the act can have some flexibility. It's not just a drag act of somebody, say, playing in their 30s or 40s. Did he? I think it said in the Radio Times interview he played somebody older at one point in one aspect of a show. A bit like, is it Sandy Stone with Dame Edda? Barry Humphries does a few different characters, and one is an older. Could I
just say best wishes for Barry Humphries at the moment, who's not well.
Certainly.
As an Australian, I feel like I have to say that.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree. Fantastic standard of actor and comedian. So yes, my understanding with the Radio Times article was that RTD had seen something. Obviously, he knew Jinx Monsoon anyway, so he could have appointed him at any time. But apparently, he saw him do an aspect of this persona, which I thought sounded as though he was playing an older character or more kind of masculine part of the persona. And then he saw the flexibility, and then he persuaded the production team to include him. But it's when it says, you see, that's why I agree with what you're saying, because it's like, what signals is the production office intending to convey to the audience? And is this trying to rile, trying to just create a kind of toxic PR,
Absolutely.
create a debate?
But it's like I said recently, Brendan, I got the feeling originally that that they may have been, to use MJ's word there, trolling us as fans and also the audience because of what is going on with this discussion around the world now over should drag queens be going into primary schools, nursery schools, and some of the acts are actually questionable. There's no doubt about that, but that's a big debate that's going on, and I don't believe RTD will like that. I think he'll be very much no, this is a thing that should be open to all in the name of inclusivity or diversity or whatever it's going to be, even though it's just a role, it's just a job, it's just theatrical. And I was wondering if they were trolling us by saying, right, this Jinx Monsoon person's coming into your show, your beloved show, but actually it's going to be the actor that plays Jinx Monsoon. Now, obviously I've just shown the pictures there. Let's have a look at them again. It's not. It's actually the drag act. It's not. It's an actor playing a character, playing a character.
Yes, and you see, when I look at the costume, when I see the kind of keyboard collar, when I see that heightened hairstyle, are we going down a kind of Marvel comic road? Are we going down? We've got Beat the Meep. Are we going down comic strip? Are we going down Panto Dame road? Are we going down comic strip cartoon? I'm trying to work out what's the angle here. That's the thing. Okay, you've included in your cast a drag actor, right? Why? This is the question. What signals are you trying to convey, and what signals are actually the general audience actually receiving nonetheless? Because it might be a different story what we're receiving. Because It's interesting what you're saying. Both of you have not really been buying into the series for a little while. I've limped on, but I am. I am.
That's an unfortunate phrase.
It's getting desperate now. I really need some nice smoke signals and some
oh my
hopefuls.
It's called Classic Series Blu-rays.
Yeah, well, absolutely. There's a whole. From what I see a lot of this, the reaction to this has been completely, yet again, once more, diverse. In that, a lot of fans, including myself, are saying, "What are you doing? What is going on?" In effect, this is jobs for the boys again. Oh, I know you. You're a mate of mine. I'll give you your character a role in my show. And that material you've just talked about, Brendan, about what was printed in the Radio Times, which of course has still lost its way now. It's not as good as it used to be. But, you've got that thing where it's coming out basically saying, oh, this is what I did. But why? I still don't understand. Were there no talented women around to play this particular character? How are they going to say, what are they going to say about this character in the episode? Not that I'll be watching it. You'll have to tell me. Is this supposed to be a woman? And if that's the case, why didn't they cast a woman?
You see, I reacted to that, and this is the problem now. We're all falling into it as well with the Twitter world and everything. I reacted, and I thought, what's going on here? And of course, I was relating it to one or two other cast announcements, and maybe I was blurring the lines. But I had to remind myself, because I'm trying to be as objective as possible, but I won't go silly. JNT, JNT, as you know, when he was telling the Radio Times about why he chose Colin Baker, or was it Sylvester McCoy? I get mixed up sometimes. And he said he saw him at a wedding. And so,
Colin.
Yeah, so he was talking about a personal event. He wasn't talking about auditions. And so, you could say there's a similar vibe in the anecdote being told by the producer. So you could question. Go on.
To be devil's advocate there, I think that casting choice was actually very good. I think J&T's instincts were good there.
Absolutely.
So, it's, I look at that picture of the character there in the costume, and my first thought is, wow, that's over the top. Is it a nightclub owner on some space station? if the story serves it, it's going to work fine. But
well, apparently this character is the greatest threat the Doctor has ever encountered type thing again, isn't it, really?
Aren't they all
nothing's ever going to be the same again type thing.
Yeah, it's a bit rinse and repeat, isn't it? That's my point. It's the, again, I mean, Russell in Doctor Who Confidential, Russell T Davies would always talk about tone meetings. So my question is, what is the tone?
Yeah.
And that for me as a viewer I'm not recoiling of, oh my God, drag queen. I'm sort of wincing a bit thinking, what's the tone of this? Now, as I say, is it some nightclub in space? That would work beautifully. I could just imagine it. Welcome to my club. Have a martini, whatever. Have a pan-galactic gargle blaster, Doctor. Whatever. I could see that sort of scene working. Yeah. It's a bit Douglas, restaurant at the end of the universe. I could see that character in the restaurant at the end of the universe. So to be fair, we don't know how it's going to be presented. But having said that, the promotional material I've seen and the video, more importantly, the video, which looked like a casting, it didn't look like a professional reveal. It looked like an audition tape.
Yeah.
The tone was very, again, the lack of verisimilitude. It was wink at the camera. And I'm always saying to my friends that modern Doctor Who, it feels like every character is aware that they're in a show called Doctor Who, and they're almost looking at the camera going, I'm in Doctor Who.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that to me breaks it. As soon as the characters lose the verisimilitude, I keep saying that word, I apologize, but it's Richard Donner coined it with Superman, the movie. He said, people have to believe that this is a real man who can fly.
Yeah.
Because it's nonsense, man in a red cape. But you believed when you watched it because of the way it was pitched, the way it was played. And again, maybe I'm old-fashioned. The show's not made for me. But I always used to watch the old Doctor Who, and I've heard actors say the same thing in rehearsals. They played it very, very with a lot of realism because they were saving the. I think it was Katie Manning who said, "We're saving the universe with a BBC Cup, but we played it for real." And therefore, you believed it as a viewer. They could do it against black drapes, and it would work. In some cases, they did do it against black drapes. But whereas now, it doesn't feel like they've got all this money. So that it's like the perception of old Doctor Who that we grew up with. It's a bit silly because it was cheap. It didn't have enough money. So by production standards, it looks a little cheap and a bit, air quote, silly. Now we've got all this money. Let's make it silly because Doctor Who's silly. And I don't know. Maybe it's my perception as a child, but it didn't seem like it was trying to be silly, certainly prior to the late 80s. It's almost like, for me, the modern show, the producers and the showrunners have gone back to watch seasons 17 and 24 only. And they've said, let's make it like that. Let's just make it like that.
But if you think about what you're saying, and I'm going along with it, when the modern series, if we want to call it that, came back in 2005, the trailers that RTD sanctioned then, when you had Billy Piper and Chris Eccleston stood in the TARDIS, do you want to come with us? And they were in role, and so yes, that kind of, we didn't get the fourth wall nonsense. Whereas
now, it was less,
yeah. Whereas now, I agree with you. When I saw the Jinx Monsoon turn around and say, "This is my costume," but then did all the hoo, and I thought, well, hold on, what are we doing? I'd have preferred.
And obviously, that wasn't a clip from the show, but
But what I'm trying to understand is, why didn't RTD do what he did in 2005 and keep them in role, keep them in character?
Well, this is it. I mean, if you had that character, which, I mean, the makeup looks amazing, the costume is well made. If that character was well lit, I'm whatever the character's name is, and I'm coming for you next year in Doctor Who, and what's this about? Your interest would be piqued, I think, a bit more. But that just felt like, oh, look at us, we're cosplaying to use the modern vernacular.
Well, I think that's generally what this. I think this is generally what this is, but you have to also remember as well, Brendan, that the Russell T Davies of 2022-23 is not the same Russell T Davies as 2004-2005. I mean, when he was bringing the show back in 2004 into 2005, it was a totally different ball game. That show could have failed. He had to play that. He had to bring Doctor Who back properly. He had to make it a drama. And by God, he did. I mean, it was huge in Britain for those few years, especially from 2005 onwards. The public did start to watch it. Now he doesn't really care about that. I mean, he has had an immense career. Let's face it. He's very, very powerful. He's very, very opinionated in what he says, and he's not frightened of that. He's not frightened of saying this is this. He's not frightened of calling people who might vote for the Conservative Party murderers, as he did last year. He's not frightened of calling out. Well, he did, and it was
all of them.
He's not frightened of saying there's, of course, there's no LGBT without the TQI. Yes, there is actually, quite frankly, because we live just in a democratic state, and we all have a different opinion, and we don't want to tie in with several things that may not affect us. That's what society is. He's not frightened anymore. So this time round, because he is basically running the entire show, it's his show. Don't care what anybody says. It's his show. It's all coming from him. Even the spin-offs, these alleged spin-offs, will all come from him. He will oversee everything. He can put in, and is putting in, whatever he wants to express his viewpoint, his anger, his political persuasion, whatever it's going to be. And he does have people around him who are not going to question him and who are going to agree with him and kiss his arse. And that's what I think is coming through.
I think creatively that's potentially a trap, because, I mean, look at what happened with George Lucas and the prequels. He didn't have anyone around him like he did with the original trilogy. He had Gary Kurtz in the 70s saying, maybe not that, and as a sense checker. Whereas if you're going into something and nobody's prepared to say, no, it'd be a bit too far, maybe step back, I think you're in murky waters creatively. I mean, you and I, JT, have worked in creative industries. I'm always saying, is that shit? Is that all right? Is that all right? Sorry, I shouldn't swear. Is that okay? Is this? I'm always sense checking, always.
Yeah. But what gets me about this is, though, they've just come off 5 proven unsuccessful years. I mean, the previous era of Doctor Who was a major flop. Everybody knows that, including them. And yet they seem to be carrying it on. They seem to be going out to absolutely make this show unwatchable. I mean, you said there, MJ, that the show's not made for you. I think that's absolutely horrible. And I think it's terribly sad because, as I said at the top of the show, Doctor Who is a show that should be open to all. And especially in the United Kingdom, where it's a tradition and it's embedded, as we all know, into our culture, to actually tell over 50% of your audience you're not wanted, as has happened in recent years and is continuing to happen again, is not going to help your show. And when you are alienating over 50% of your fan base as well, as they should have learned over the last couple of years, that's not good for profits, because we will not buy your merchandise. You see what I mean about that?
Sorry, Time Muddler, please tell me to shut up if I'm talking over you. But like you, JT, I've watched it my whole life and loved it. I mean, I'm surrounded by Daleks and TARDISes and Cybermen and scarves and question mark collars, but it just doesn't engage me anymore. And I did think to myself, maybe I'm just getting old. And then I watched series 3 of Picard and loved it, because Terry Matalas has just done an amazing job at doing everything that I think Doctor Who could potentially benefit from.
And that's something that I think people at the BBC and Walt Disney need to actually look at as well, because Picard has just shaken the world over the last week or the last couple of weeks, because they had some very good, I believe, dramatic moments, some nice fan-pleasing moments. The new chap that's got on board has tried to take this back to say, look, this is how I know Star Trek should be.
They told an engaging story.
And that's the thing. And it's accessible, isn't it? It's accessible to people that might want to just come in, like myself, who might want to just come in and see what the fuss is about, because he remembers what Star Trek used to be like in the old days. And I think that's what's going to be disappearing from Doctor Who. We all know right now, of course, that they are currently filming. Jinx Monsoon is on set at the moment. I don't know how that ties into the series. Not really that bothered, I have to be saying, because at this moment in time, I don't think I'm going to watch any of it.
How far, JT? You know, we have the constant rumour, it does the spin cycle, that RTD might be tempted to do a musical episode. And would that therefore link with this?
You know, if he does, he does. And who cares, quite frankly? I mean, ever since Buffy did that infamous episode back in the 90s of a musical episode, people were saying there should be a musical episode of everything, including Doctor Who, which wasn't even on the air. So they've always wanted something like that. You know, if they go ahead and do it, maybe they should go ahead and just get it out the way. But
it did work very well, I think, for Buffy. I think it worked very well. If it's executed with dramatic jeopardy and stakes, then it works. It does work. It can work. But
it's just that we're in the early. I mean, how long have we got to go till Doctor Who is on a regular basis being broadcast? And we've got a long wait. And in this long wait, the crumbs of, news we get needs to be well choreographed. And as you know, there's been a sequence recently that I actually think is just bothering people, disturbing people, making them question whether this is for them. Yeah. And you'd think RTD, I thought, had it sussed in 2005. I thought the whole PR machine was brilliant. Now, you are both more kind of cognizant of the whole sci-fi era, and I have to say, this is a long period for any program or franchise to just be kind of not on screen. And so how do the producers keep us interested, keep us wanting more? I just think we're starting in the wrong place. This is the problem. And we're turning a few more people to think, oh God, people I've told about it who are those general viewers who, if Doctor Who is, the zeitgeist, they'll be on it. When it's gone, off piste, they'll stop watching it. They're that type, fair weather.
As has happened over the last few years, yeah.
Yeah, and we need those people. It's mainstream BBC One. And those people I'm talking to mention these cast announcements and that, and they're going, I don't know what this is about. I don't know why. And all they're hearing are certain token possible stunt casting ideas. They're not hearing that there's a great story arc coming. The first time we saw Peter Capaldi, I know they did the announcement program, but the first time you saw him on screen, you saw his eyes. The great reveal of Jinx Monsoon, did we have to say, as you were saying, better lit, in role, just see part of them, see them within their set? If JT, they're videoing it now, they're recording it now, why couldn't we have had a clip? I don't mean a clip from the actual program, but actually have them in set.
But my point is, as I'll keep saying, is why a drag queen anyway? I mean, it's just sensationalism as far as I'm concerned. And I absolutely do think it's part of Russell's, like it was shown on his Instagram, it's part of his fight. But I'm always going to ask, what fight? I mean, sometimes I think these people with these extreme liberal ideological beliefs create fights just to fight them.
Again, I think that's what it is. If this had happened, if this was a decision that had been made 15 years ago, I don't think people would have looked twice at it.
No,
but because it's the timing, and it's a little bit, for want of a better word, it's a little bit narcissistic. I'm going to put something out there that I know people will attack because of the timing and whatever, and when they do that, I can say, "See, look how horrible they all are."
That's exactly what I think as well, and that's what I mean about trolling the fans.
That I think has
happened, hasn't it? I mean, you can go onto social media platforms now, and if you're not onto social media platforms, I wouldn't really recommend it following any of the Doctor Who ones, because it shows the division to this day in what has happened since 2017, 2018 with Doctor Who fandom. We are completely divided, more now than ever before. And in this, the 60th anniversary year, where a brand new production team should be going, oh my God, look what's happened. We need to bring everybody together to actually support our show again. They're not. They're creating more divisions. They're getting us going. You've got fans arguing with each other all the time. And you've got certain fans calling others ists, phobes, the N-word that I believe we're not supposed to mention on YouTube, even though it's historically accurate. We can't say that. Certain 1940s Germans, you've got.
Oh, right. I thought you meant the other one. I'm thinking, where are you going with that? Yeah.
Yeah. But you've got people being called this because, I mean, I have recently been called all these things again because I said, well, drag's a bloke in a frock telling jokes, like I did at the start there in my monologue. That is a fact. Drag has been around in Britain, especially for ages. It's not endangered in any way, shape, or form, and the greats made an art of this. They made great cabaret productions out of this. It was good theatre, but it was always in adult bars or in adult shows. It was never anywhere else. And yet here comes Russell the Righteous saying, right, well, I'm going to put this statement into a family show because that's going to get into. That's where I genuinely believe he's coming from. Okay, you're saying we can't take these drag queens, some of whom are questionable, and the facts are there. You can go and see the videos, but you're saying we can't have them in schools. I'm going to put them in Doctor Who, which children love. Parents are going to have to make that decision as well. Well, I'm not going to let you watch it, or I am going to let you watch it. I just find it a very confused time for our beloved show right now, and I just don't understand where any of them are coming from on this.
Well, that's why I'm thinking: is it a casting to make it a kind of larger than life Cruella de Vil type character? In which case, I'm out in another way, because it's not. I like my sci-fi to be taken seriously to a degree, and that kind of takes it more kind of, panto. And I nearly lost Doctor Who in the late 80s because of that very same thing. So it's again coming back to the casting, but we discussed this ages ago, and when we're talking about divisive fandom and toxic fandom and all the divisions going on and all the arguments maybe being started and triggered by the production office, possibly, I think it's important that we fans remind each other that we used to have these debates saying, well, I'm a John Pertwee fan, I'm a Tom Baker fan. No, Troutman's my
I miss those days.
And, yeah.
Yes, me too. Me too.
We didn't cancel each other.
No.
Okay, you'd mention a certain actor and you'd say, yeah, he wasn't my Doctor. Now, that doesn't mean you're trolling the show. It doesn't mean that you should be cancelled. And I just think the level of debate we need in fandom is we are allowed to have taste. We are allowed to have, our own kind of opinion. It doesn't mean we don't want Jinx Monsoon cancelled. We don't want anything silly. We're just asking questions.
But
exactly. I think those questions need to be asked. I think we need to ask the production team, what are you doing? What do you think, Michael?
Well, I just think if the show had come out and Jinx Monsoon had been cast and there's the character and the story was good and the performance is wonderful, people would think, gee, that was good. I mean, we're not getting announcements about every character guest artist, are we? I'm assuming guest artist. We're just getting announcements. Then again, it's the mean intent behind it, not the actual casting itself.
Yeah, I mean, we had that whole thing, didn't we, last year when they were filming the David Tennant specials about the transgender actress who's coming into the 3 episodes there. So that was when I look at these patterns, you go, well, you had that announcement, and that was a big announcement. They didn't really make a fuss of the legend that was Bernard Cribbins coming back into the show, which was, to me, more of a sales point. To say, look, he's coming back in. Never mind this young actor coming into the show. And now they've done it again. I genuinely believe it's part of a political platform that Russell made very, very clear in his rants last year at 2 award ceremonies, as well as interviews.
I mean, if this had happened back in the 90s, those casting decisions had been made, we would have been at a club meeting and somebody would have said, oh, did you know that character was trans? And we would have gone, oh, really? And moved on.
As I've been reminded before, there has been a trans actor in Doctor Who before, and none of us blinked. There was no big announcements. Yeah, because we didn't care. It's only in the recent years that, because of these alleged activists and because of these issues being enforced on us and being pushed on us and dictated to us, well, of course you're going to get a reaction, because we don't like, as a society, being told what to think and what to do.
It's more that it's got nothing to do. I mean, again, I'm not an expert on gender. I don't profess to be, but
who is? Even these people that say there are living in Cloudland. There are 2 genders.
Well, I mean, it's being told that you're a certain type of person because you ask a certain question, or you. I mean, it's just. I mean, when you mentioned before those horrible people in Germany in the 40s, I just imagine them all sitting around the Reichschancellery and saying, what do you think of Sylvester McCoy as a Doctor? Horrible people. I'm not sure about that casting. I'm not sure about that casting. I mean, it's that to use that name, if you have an opinion about a TV show, is absurd. I had this discussion with a friend of mine whose grandfather was in a certain facility that those people created in the 40s. And she said the way people throw that word around makes her sick.
Yeah,
quite right.
As we sat there eating Shabbat dinner. It's an insult, I think, to people who suffered through.
I look at all this and just think that these people have created all these issues just so that, because they've got something to do, basically. But when it's enforced into our shows, I mean, you can't go. I don't know what it's like in your neck of the woods now. I can assume, but in Britain now, you can't watch anything on television now without being preached to in some element or another, and it looks like the new version of the all singing, all dancing new Doctor Who. It's not all new. It's not all singing, all dancing. It's some of the same old nonsense. Is going to do the same thing. But when you're looking at the fact that Doctor Who now has possible rival in another science fiction franchise you mentioned earlier with Star Trek possibly now finding its way. There is another show on its way as well, another series there that's going to actually, in my opinion, translate. I'm going to do another show about that. The danger is when you're enforcing issues of today into your show, it dates quickly. Now, I have a theory that the reboot Doctor Who dates quite quickly anyway. I rarely go back and watch it.
Got to be honest with you, I have trouble rewatching it. I think there's probably two that come to mind that I can rewatch.
Oh, what's that? Go on.
The Human Nature.
Yes, the two-parters.
Family of Blood and the Satan Pit. They're the only two.
Yeah.
That I can watch because there's a bit of jeopardy there. Again, I can only speak to narrative. I can't speak to gender.
But it's interesting that you mentioned those two stories, because they're two that I can remember quite out of all that's going on, because it's about story. And they won't date as much, really, because it's about the story. It's like the original series is all about story. I get very frustrated, Brendan, when I hear about people talking about, there were always politics in Doctor Who. I never got any messages when I was a kid, apart from the fact that there were
morality tales. There were morality tales.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a difference between politics and morals and morality and left and right. They're two different things. Politics and morality are two different things. I think we can all agree it's bad to hurt people. I think we can all agree.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm a lefty. Historically, I haven't changed. I've always voted left, but I feel like certainly, I don't know. It feels like Doctor Who. I didn't leave Doctor Who; it left me.
Well, I think that's the same. I mean, a friend of mine said that to me the other week when we were having discussions about this. He doesn't like science fiction at all. He thinks I'm weird for liking anything to do with science fiction, and he's been telling me for 20 odd years, the 80s, get into the bloody real world. He always tells me. But we were both left, traditionally, always been quite left, quite liberal. But he said to me, we have to understand now that we didn't leave the left. The left left us because they've gone too far in certain aspects. And I think that's what's come through with a lot of these people. I mean, I am sick and tired, I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm sick and tired of the words inclusion and diversity. I am fed up of hearing about it, because all it ever seems to do is generate segregation and arguments. Whereas previously, before these things became jobs, before they became KPIs in businesses, before it was enforced on us by the likes of Stonewall in the United Kingdom, who rewrote what it actually means completely, we've got this element where actually nobody cared. You went for a job interview and you got the job if you were good at the job, if you proved that you could do the job. You were accepted by people in the pubs for who you were. Now, because we're all being bracketed and labelled, and Doctor Who is an example of how it's doing that, it's made things far more complicated and far more in a sense, intolerant. Do you know where I'm coming from?
Yeah, and that's where me trying to be objective evaporates, because the announcement of Jinx Monsoon, the announcement could have been, you could have had the photograph or a bit of the video with a bit of that cackle, I suppose, if you want that Panto Dame cackle. And you could have had,
Bring back Ken Dodd, I say.
You could have said, and this is the Rani. This is the Black Guardian. This is the whoever, yeah? But instead it said, this is the actor, didn't it, really?
Well, it didn't even say that. It said, this is Jinx Monsoon. It said, this is the character. The actor's name is completely different.
It's very Inception, isn't it? It's giving me a headache.
So the PR department obviously thought the most important fact we want to tell the audience is what? That he's an actor that most of you haven't heard of is in the show. That's not going to sell. So is their version, it's a drag queen? Is that their PR? Because their PR wasn't, this is an important character in the program. That wasn't prioritized. So when I'm trying to be objective, I'm thinking, I know, but you didn't say it's the most powerful enemy the Doctor's ever faced, called the Wara. And it didn't. And then you think, hold on, maybe it's not about narrative then. Maybe it's not.
The hyperbole is getting a little tiresome, isn't it? It's
like,
really let us judge for ourselves. Let us judge for ourselves.
I don't know why that is still sticking now, because we had this back in the original time from 2004's publicity into 2005 onwards. This is going to be the best. This is going to be brilliant, blah, 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 blah. And it continued to continue. And now it's just boring because we've heard it all before. In fact, some of the people on Twitter in the Doctor Who case this week, after that costume reveal, have actually said, oh, no, not another best enemy or worst enemy or threat again. They're actually, the supporters of this are clicking onto that. You know, I think that was quite funny. Is that you've got to change the narrative of how you're selling all this stuff.
Well,
I mean, yeah,
sorry,
go on.
no. I was going to say, speaking of that, and in the interest, the internet is all about fact checking, and we've got to have our facts right. So I do need to fact check Mr. Davies on something in terms of that announcement. I'll quote him here. There's a storm coming. There's a storm coming in, Doctor. A monsoon. Yes, jinx monsoon. I do need to correct you there, Mr. Davies. A monsoon is not a storm. It's a weather system. And instead a pattern of rains and winds that can span over large geographical areas. So just a fact check there.
I think that's so important as well. You know, it's just brilliant. But I mean, one thing that got me about this is that you mentioned it just there, actually, Brendan. You know, some of the fans. Actually, I'm not going to call them fans because I don't believe they are. I really don't believe they are, and I do believe that one of the reasons they've put in Jinx Monsooners in Doctor Who is to target this crowd they love of all these purple and blue rinsed youngsters who watch that old crone show, you know, absolute trashy television, one of the worst things. And as I said at the top of the show, that's also contributed to the confusion that a lot of these kids have come along with now, because they are completely and utterly screwed in the head. They are all suffering mental well-being issues, in my opinion. But what we've got here is, you know, we've got this case of, oh, it's going to be the Rani. Hang on a minute. Not only would a drag queen, in my opinion, being cast as the Rani be a huge insult to the fabulous and gorgeous and wonderful Kate O'Mara, who I was very lucky to meet, but also it's why not just cast another woman? I mean, very, very hypocritical, I find this. If this character comes into Doctor Who next year as a woman, I will actually really be, nonplussed in that, but I will actually double down on the fact that I think Russell the Righteous is a hypocrite. Because only a few short months ago, of course, he was banging on about only gay actors can play gay characters in films and television.
Oh, yeah.
Hello. There's two little distinct things going on here.
Well, hang on. Anthony Hopkins played Hannibal Lecter. I don't think
that's where we go to with this whole thing.
He's not a serial killer, is he?
Well, so what's the argument?
Human flesh?
So what's the argument with Priscilla, Queen of the Desert now? Would it have to? You couldn't have Terence Stamp. You couldn't have Guy Pearce. You couldn't have.
Well, what Russell said, I think it was last year. He basically was going on about he felt. I mean, it depends what day it is with him, obviously, but he felt that only gay actors could play gay parts. And he went on about that sort of stuff. It's absolute nonsense. They're actors. They're there to actually explore other characters, other aspects of life, other ways of living. That's what they do. And that's what they should be cast on. It shouldn't just be typecasting. Oh, you're a gay actor. I've got a great part for you here, which happens to be gay. Because then you end up playing a version of yourself. Where's the stretch in that? But I just find it quite hypocritical that he was banging on about that 1 minute, and then the next minute he's cast a drag or whoever into these parts, which, let's face it, in drama, the only parts for drag queens are drag queens, unless they're coming out of the drag. Like a lot of people I know who are very talented performers in and out of drag, and they create a character. That's part of what they do. The drag is a character, but when they're going on stage in other things, they're, again, looking at a different role. They're acting. This is why I get quite upset with some of the drag queen talent, I use the word talent, that's around today, because they don't seem to be actors. They just be mincing ninnies, prancing around thinking they're women.
This is why I'm looking at the two aspects I think are possible for narrative. One is he's going down the gender fluid road of Time Lady, Time Lord, that unlike in the past when it was very clearly demarcated, wasn't it? Romana's a time lady, Rani's a time lady, blah, blah, blah. And now it seems to be possibly he's going to blur the two because he's got a character who can obviously play a heightened woman and obviously is a male. So whether there's that. The other version is whether as the character, he's got two different versions he can play. The one we've just seen, which is the drag version. And then there's a more sinister, kind of dark, I don't know whether you can do disguise. I'm trying to work out because the Master would have disguise. And I'm trying to work out whether RTD watching these shows has thought, do you know what? There's another way I can do this, that drag queens can play personas. I don't know. I'm trying to work this out.
I think you're putting more thought into this show than they do, to be
I
honest.
think you are there, actually. But when I see that, I can say it's a drag queen playing the role. This is Jinx Monsoon playing whatever role. So you've got...
and again, to be fair, though, we don't know what the role is. I think...
We don't, but you can assume from that picture, and I can assume from that picture. I mean, look at that wig. That's a drag wig.
Yeah.
Okay,
but there may be a drag role. It may be a legitimate drag role, and
it might be. So what you've got there, though, again, is to say you've got an actor. I don't know the guy's name now. I can't remember it. So you've got the actor playing Jinx Monsoon, playing another character, and then what you're saying there, it could be playing another character on top of that. I mean, it's not making things easy, is it?
It's not offensive. It's just confusing.
Although it will be offensive to some people, I would imagine, because of what's going on in the real world right now. And that's their right to be offended by that. If a parent wants to say, I don't want drag in front of my child, as far as I'm concerned, you have every right to say that. Because some of the stuff, I can guarantee you, some of the stuff the children across the United Kingdom, I can't speak for the world, but some of the stuff that the children across the United Kingdom are being taught is utterly unbelievable. I cannot believe they're being told there's more than two genders in schools across the country.
Again, it's the timing, and
yes, and I think that's why he's done it.
It's 15 years ago, as I said, if it had happened then, nobody bat an eyelid. But it's the timing, and it's provocative, and it's deliberately antagonistic. It's trying to weed out the people that'll criticize, so that they can say, "Look how everyone criticizes our silly little show." And honestly, the show is. We've all been through the last time it was on its deathbed.
It's still on a deathbed.
No. The last time, as in 30 years ago or so. And now it's probably, I think it's more of a tether now than it was in '89.
Oh, totally.
Because in '89 there was the BBC was sick of it. They're shutting it down. We've had enough. Silly show. Well, you don't give it any money, so of course it looks silly. But anyway, let's get rid of it. So it's gone. But there was a huge fan base that fought for 16 years to bring it back. And so it comes back in 2005 with the goodwill of the fan base.
The fans, yeah.
Then the general public, another layer saying, "Oh, Doctor Who! I used to love Doctor Who. Remember? We'll have to watch that on a Saturday night. I used to watch that as a kid. In fact, I'll show my kids Doctor Who." Now,
yes,
half the fan base have gone.
Yep, and we're not coming back.
The general public, certainly the people qualitatively that I've met, could not care less. Yeah. They've got more of a fight on their hands, I think, and I think there's a bit of hubris at play here. There's a little bit of overconfidence, I think, as a production unit. I think just deliver a good story.
You need to be sure-footed, don't you? And I thought RTD, when he was brought back, I was one of the believers, and I thought, well, he did. I liked how he brought it back in 2005. I know.
There's no question he's an incredible producer. There's no question.
But another period, when we had Colin Baker's second season, and of course the BBC had it on trial, so we had the trial of the Time Lord, and I'm just thinking how that went as well, PR-wise. We knew this. Yeah, we knew the program again was going to have to prove itself and be sure-footed. What were the first casting announcements we heard? Linda Bellingham, Michael Jason.
Michael Jason, yeah, two huge names at the time as well.
Yeah, and so you knew it was sure-footed.
Yeah, it was solid because you knew you were going to get solid. And then, they didn't make a fuss of people. They didn't make big cast announcements after that as to people coming in, apart from, of course, the wonderful Joan Sims, because she was a big name. And, she was an actress as well as a comedian. So that was a big draw. But you didn't get that whole thing back then. Whereas now, as we've spoken about, we are getting what I would look at as sensationalist announcements to try and get... I don't know why you would want to try and do that when you know it's going to be diverse, when you're going to know it's going to cause debate. I mean, I do think they must be looking at the social media and just judging everybody, saying, "Ha ha ha! We knew that the right, because we're all right wing. Get over it. We're all right wing now. No matter what your opinion on this is, we are all right wing according to them. We are all nasty. We're all ists and phobes and all that nonsense." And I think they must just get a genuine kick out of all that. But I do agree with you, MJ. What the problem is that there's not. Right now, there's not enough of us going to be back. I guarantee you the Tennant episodes will be huge, but depending on the content of those episodes leading into the next series, it's either going to switch the public on or off. And I genuinely don't think they're going to hand around for next year.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting. As I say, I'm not the plots and all that sort of stuff. I haven't been engaged with for years, but I'm fascinated by the behind the scenes stuff. I'm going to be fascinated to see what happens moving forward. Yeah, it'll be interesting.
Yeah, and what about you, Brendan? Do you think it's going to be an interesting time for the public as well as fandom?
Well, it's not engaging the public. So at the moment, Doctor Who's
public
not
don't care.
Yeah, Doctor Who's not talking to them yet. You know, where I work and the people I talk to, nobody's aware of the program yet. The David Tennant, the last thing was the David Tennant. You see, the people I'm talking to were shocked by that. Obviously, we knew it was coming, but they were shocked. So that's the last time I've ever heard anyone discuss Doctor Who as a piece of TV gossip. Was, oh, David Tennant, what's all that about? And that's it. So in a one good way, I suppose, apart from me raising it with friends and that, nobody actually knows about these casting announcements. The other thing I want to say is the Jinx Monsoon announcement, wasn't that by accident though? And not the video clip, but was it released too early or something? Is this not?
I don't know. I don't know. I haven't heard that as a rumor. I would say not. When they're bringing somebody to Cardiff to film, they're inevitably going to be seen, whether it be on location or whatever, but they're inevitably going to be seen, and then the word will get around anyway. So I think with stuff like that, they seem to think that this character is massive, although none of us on this panel had heard of him before. It's not as big as they don't think.
That's not a litmus test for me. I mean,
yeah. And of course, the show that he has come from is not as big as they think it is. It's a small rated show on a failing BBC channel called BBC Three. I think they're just trying to do it for sensational reasons completely, and also to try and find an elusive American market, because we all know that the Americans rejected the show. So,
but may I also just keep reminding it when people watch this that we are questioning some casting announcements. Just as when you mentioned Joan Sims, I did as a fan. I wanted Doctor Who to come back strong. I mentioned Jason and Bellingham. When they mentioned Joan Sims, I love Carry On, but I thought, well, I know what she's famous for. For a second, I'm questioning. When they announced Ken Dodd, I questioned it. I did, and I love Ken Dodd. So I do question the casting announcements. I'm not just questioning this one, by the way, folks. I do question. I'm trying to work out what's happening. I will question a lot of what's happening to the program I love.
Absolutely. Well, listen, guys, it's been go on, MJ.
No, I don't think it's. I don't mean to be a pessimist, but I don't think it's made for us anymore. I mean, I think I heard an interview with Russell T Davies saying that very thing, and I can't quote him exactly. I can't reference it, but I'm sure I heard an interview where he said it's not made for us, meaning and he was including himself. To be fair, he was saying it's made for the next generation, and maybe that's the problem.
The problem I have with that is, again, I would question him, because the next generation is the generation he wants. He wants the ones that are going to think like him. He's dictating to all these people. I mean that is massive right now. I mean, if you look at some of the things that have come back on the back of the social media, if you look at some of the people that are watching the show, they are, in my opinion, they've been brainwashed by this nonsense and these ideological beliefs. They're running around thinking there's more than two genders. They're running around thinking a drag queen is another gender. It's not. It's a bloody job. All this sort of stuff. But I can guarantee you there is not enough of them to make this show guaranteed. They need our age group. And if they are just saying like the previous team did, oh, it's made for this sort of audience, it's going to fall flat on its arse. And this time it will be a hugely expensive mistake.
It's not made for you. It's not made for you, but keep buying our classic Blu-rays.
And that's what's not going to happen. Yeah.
At the end of the day, like a lot of creators these days, they hate us. They
absolutely do, and it's crystal clear,
very, very clear, and it's provocative. As I say, the casting in and of itself, fine. Let's see what the character's like, but it's the timing and everything like that. All the messaging since certainly the last decade in this and other franchises has been, we don't want a certain ilk of fan, meaning older.
And they're still not getting it, are they? Because they're not making money. They're not getting the viewing figures. There's a lot of state here as well. There's lots of money being plowed into these shows now, and it's failing, and they're not listening because they're right. We're all wrong. Listen, guys, it's the end of time. Thank you so much, very much for joining me. It's been a really good, interesting discussion with you. I hope you have enjoyed it. If you have, then please give us a like. Please leave your comments on what we've talked about in the comment box, because this is about your opinion as well. And if you want to, please do subscribe to the channel. Again, thank you so much, you two, for joining us. See you next time. Thank you very much.
Bye.